Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at The Room 3. So this game came out originally in 2017 for cell phones, 7 years after the foundation of the company Fireproof Games. This is the third game they made, and it's the third game by the title The Room. Now that would be fine in general if you were making AAA games with the Room, but it feels very weird considering how these are just cell phone puzzle games that aren't terrible by any means, but aren't to the level of what you would expect for a console game or a PC game, and them getting ported to PC then has the game suffer quite a bit in comparison to even a single A game. As it is limited by a touchscreen and the capabilities of a cell phone versus the capabilities of a PC or a console. This game also, I think, suffers heavily in the fact that there is a Room 4 called The Room Old Souls and The Room VR made by Fireproof Games after this point. And then there's one other game that they released in between the Room 3 and the Room 4. Excuse me. And that's all they have to offer, but also the story of what there is, which you kind of just have to read, is so forgettable that I can't tell you one bit. I vaguely think we were in the second game chasing after our father who went missing, and we were given a kind of special visual Oculus device that let us see secrets, and that brought us to multiple puzzles, a lot of which I think at the end took us to this kind of weird multi-dimensional world that didn't really explain itself very well. Maybe there was some demonic influence. There was a ghost at one point. There's just a lot of craziness certainly going on there. Let's see. We'll click here. And so let's start playing the Room 3. I didn't know it was going to actually jump back into here. Let's just double check the settings. Hints on volume is at maximum. The volume is actually very high. 1080p preset amazing. I imagine amazing is probably the best you can get. Yeah, I doubt that there's... Let's see, I doubt that there's a real reason why you would want to just turn everything up. But I guess we can just leave it there, if it'll allow for that. And that. I would say The Room as a game series is always intriguing at first look. They do have that going for them. If they were making puzzles as an employee of, like, Cyan, the makers of the Myst games, they probably could make quite a few interesting Myst-like puzzles. But they seem to not really do a great job with the story, or not really even care about the story. And the puzzles themselves become a little bit derivative of the previous puzzles in the same game and same series, so it gets kind of obvious and simplistic. It would be interesting, particularly in this third game, if they threw a monkey wrench and we don't run into so many puzzles that work the same way. Of course, the danger there is that they would throw in something like a color puzzle or an audio puzzle that can definitely throw a lot of people for a loop. They have a three-pointed pyramid for the third game as their focused object, which makes sense. And this looks different. Like, I feel like the previous games did have tutorials, but not tutorials that were particularly in other places. Yeah, double click on the journal to focus on it. See, this does look like a major improvement compared to what we have seen in the past. Which one's the journal? This one? So, can't double click on anything else in the tutorial mode. Interesting. There is definitely a different feeling here to start with, where previously you were always already in a house. It was already fairly dim. You never left the house. You never felt like you were in a world. You were more trapped in a house. So I wonder if maybe you're going to be playing as a different character, investigating the events of something that happened in the past. This still feels like it is a little bit in the past. Like, most people wouldn't be riding on a train, reading newspapers in modern times. Be nice if this was voice acted. That's the one thing that they should do. Interesting. Right click to zoom in. Oh, nope. Zoom out. Well, I hope you paused and read that, because I didn't. And now we have a ghost in a box. Let's see. Let's read this. AS is gone. This entire house is gone. I dare not recount all that I saw. I'd rather that I was insane, that those infernal boxes were but a figment of my own fevered mind. I should never ignored you. If only I had come sooner. If only I had not come at all. That is July 15th. July 17th. I've awoken from a nightmare, but am forever haunted by it. I submerge myself into my work as if drawn to the memories, but it is no use. The null calls to me in my sleep and seizes my unoccupied moment. Any unoccupied moment to fill my thoughts. Unbidden. I am marked. And there's like fingerprints here, but you can't apparently. No, you can't turn the page. Interesting. You just drag it. I wonder how many people didn't get that far because they didn't get a tutorial. Now, the audio was really quiet, really loud before, and now I think I might have to try and turn the audio up. Let's see if we can do this. There we go. So I have a program that I don't use very often that theoretically should let me turn the audio up from the Windows volume dial without actually having to minimize the window. Of course, I have no idea what the number is now. Probably somewhere around 10. Back to the story. July 19th. I've continued to petition the Royal Institute. There's something about their denials that do not sit with me. Their insistence is too shrill and determined to cover something as innocent as ignorance. July 21st, a breakthrough as the Royal Institute rebuffed me once more, and a wider undersecretary with a drawn look slid a packet into my jacket pocket as they passed. They refused to meet my eye as they hurried away. The packet included a page torn from a map of the south coast with an island circle. I leave on the first train. So, yeah, there's a major problem here. You really need to buy, and I honestly think the room games are probably a little too expensive on Steam, but you really need to buy all the room games you can possibly get and play them all in a row. Maybe you could take a week break in between each game, but anything more than that, you're going to forget the story completely, which effectively makes a episodic game that was released over the course of years that is probably a little too high priced. So until you get a really good bundle and a really good discount, it's hard to recommend a game like this to new people, new players. Here we have a page with just a bunch of symbols that won't make any sense at the moment. And this symbol definitely looks familiar. And this is like the null. And I assume the null was like an evil force. That's what I vaguely recall. Interesting that I could twist the camera angle and read the page. I would have thought they would have locked it, but actually that's kind of an interesting idea. Hey, but you would have to have a reason to want to be able to do that. I wonder if these pages are going to fill in or have some kind of secret on them. The first Myst game had a book of puzzles that had tons and tons of pages, and it kind of ruined that idea and that concept for a whole generation. I imagine there probably was a story previously of books that looked blank and unfinished and actually were written in code or with invisible ink or something. And I imagine you're not just turning the page infinitely. And if you were turning the page infinitely, I feel like there should be an ominous music playing at that case. Alright, let's right click there. Because by the looks of it, if this is visually accurate, I've not. This is my suitcase, I don't need to open it. First class bus. Then we'll try and click on everything else just to see if there's anything interactable. Click on the key and pick it up. A small key being added to an inventory where I don't feel like you had an inventory before. I have a key, but there's no keyhole on this box. The wind surface looks strange. I should get the eyepiece from my suitcase. So he still has the eyepiece. And they're trying to make as many motions as possible. My suitcase has some modifications. I require a degree of secrecy. Really? So this is not going to swing open and fall down? Like, it seemed fairly obvious. We can't click on anything else. Except for the eyepiece, which now seems to have a leather band around it to attach to your head. Whereas you would, I'm fairly certain, just holding it up. The Lenore house destroyed, no remains found, exclusive owner missing, elusive owner, Miss Margaret Cox, apparently playing a role too. See, it was definitely the eyepiece element. Sometimes the eyepiece can be used to see things that are otherwise hidden. No real explanation on any of that. And the layout of this map only lines up if he has basically glued the map to his suitcase and written this stuff himself. And this red gem seems to not really do anything at the moment. It seems like this could make you fairly nauseous using the eyepiece too. Should use the eyepiece to examine the curious box. Which I guess means right click. Alright, let's look around one more time just to make sure we're not surprised by anything. The using of the eyepiece and the solutions being so similar is kind of the problem I've had with previous versions of this. This is a fairly simple tutorial puzzle, which I have no problem with that. And that just magically makes the keyhole appear, and then you just drag it, and then you have to rotate it. Which, yeah, if this was a Wii game, that would make a lot more sense. Yeah. And there's certainly a level of magic, it seems, just around how this technology works. An engraved pyramid has been found, and ELPIS. What happened? Where am I? You don't get like a full view of the room. But so I don't know. See, there's no right clicking, and there's nothing the middle mouse button does. So we see a person. I feel like you didn't see anybody other than the ghost in the previous game, so they have improved slowly, very slowly here, to be better at using, I believe, the Unity engine, and that's pretty much what this whole series is for the creators. Is it was a great excuse for them to learn the Unreal Engine, and now we're at a different angle. And you are just kind of still in this weird position where, in a lot of ways, this is one of the better cell phone games out there, and it still isn't really that interactive. And you probably have a level in which you just can't make cell phone games that interactive because you just can't play that way. Alright. Question mark button will glow when a new hint is available. Hints can be disabled from the options menu. Okay. So, at the moment, this engraved pyramid probably acts as just a key. There's this. Let's read this first. You were warned not to look for me, but you would not listen, and it has become necessary for me to find you. Welcome to Grey Home, the seat of my ancestors. Seldom for few visitors have walked these halls, fewer still have walked free of them. In the past, I have drawn my subjects from the greatest minds of history. Each played their part, but none outlived it. The null wraps its bounds around all except you. It was a mistake to try and keep you away. I see now that I have great need of you. If you can prove yourself worthy, your first task is to find something that will aid you in the trials ahead. Find it or never leave this room. I will have gone to great efforts, and I will have gone to great efforts in vain. The Craftsman. See, one thought I want to question is, if I do this and then I double click on this, it turns off the lens. If I do this and then click on this, it turns off the lens also. Okay. So the power of flight, the well of knowledge. My face is silent without my hands. The poor have me, the rich need me. Okay. So, the power of flight, the well of knowledge. I don't know the answer to that one. The poor have me, the rich need me is nothing. Is the answer to that. The poor have nothing, the rich need nothing. My face is silent without my hands is a clock. Let's see. Okay. There doesn't seem to be anything you can interact with here. Is this dial? So we have a clock. We have poison. Can we turn off the lights? Yeah, that's probably the best idea. That's probably the answer to that one. And then this is probably the answer to that one. And you would never be able to solve this without the lens, which would make sense. That's probably the answer to that one. And it just jumps to a full cutscene at that point. It is quite painful to watch you blunder to and fro, half blinded by the crude lenses you stumbled upon. Allow me to pry the scales from your eyes. These are the instruments of a craftsman. They will allow you to see the universe as it truly is and reach the unseen infinity of space that surrounds us, the craftsman. Which I would definitely appreciate, having a lens that doesn't have a kind of chromatic 3D effect on it. Alright. Just rotate, open. And this wouldn't be the first time that we've gotten an improvement to our lens. There's something strange on this door. So now it still has a weird effect on it. Double click the keyhole. Wow. So it seems like your mind can just travel now into smaller locations. Alright, well. Clearly what we're going to have to do here is line up the pieces. And I imagine you can go either direction to get that to work. It's a little weird to have a tutorial that has you find a key and then they give you a lens in which you're never going to need a key again, by the looks of it. We're still in the tutorial, which is interesting. Double click the doorway to go through it. Now what would turn this away from being a single screen, like a single screen puzzle game, and possibly turn it into a more interesting adventure game, would be the idea that we have to go to multiple rooms and multiple locations. I'm not sure I fully believe that. And at a certain point, this is definitely going to be a difficult puzzle to accomplish. See. So this is not something that we switch around so much, as these are collectibles that we're gonna have to find. And there's the knoll, and there's the knoll door, and we can see grotesque vines going into goo. Let's read the letter. The key to the knoll will be forged here. I've given you the first piece. For safety, the remaining 4 are held separately. Retrieve them and bring them to this font. Only then can you fulfill your destiny, the Craftsman. And see, we're definitely trusting the Craftsman. They are taking off the wax seal on these puzzles quite nicely. So you know if you've read them or not. That is definitely creepy. And I guess it's safe to touch these. So we know that there's 4 more of these. Although it seems like there's actually 5 more of these. Nope, this is just a puzzle in itself. Okay. So then the question becomes, does this make sense? Or are these changeable? See, I guess the idea here is if we were going to have a braided part, we need to find where this braided part comes from, if it is actually implemented. This doesn't work because there's not a stripe here. This kind of works because there's a stripe there. That totally doesn't work. That totally doesn't work. I think that works fairly nicely on that point. And then, see, that one probably works fairly well. Was that all I needed to do? Apparently so. And so that got one part of the sword to cross. Alright, and then we need a blue bird to merge these two together. So that seems like that would work. And then we need to add a cricket, and that'll work. So fairly simple, just puzzle to brute force. And I'm gonna have to just go ahead and assume that, like, over here is nothing at the moment, and over here is nothing at the moment, because the game does not seem like it wants to let me walk around. Seems like we're gonna return to this room multiple times, but that is an improvement. Of course, like any game that basically has a detective vision, you're going to potentially, what is this place? I have to find a way out. I really wish this was voiced. I bet there is not that much dialogue, so it would have been nice for the PC version if they had added more and hired a voice actor to voice all of it, and added that as an extra to the cell phone games, considering how the PC versions came out like a year at least later. Yeah, every time you enter a new area, you're going to pretty much just want to go into detective vision mode and scan around the entirety of a world, and I heavily suspect they will hide most of the detective vision stuff until later. The hands aren't moving, it must be broken. Is that what you take from that? I mean, I wouldn't assume that a grandfather clock is broken just because the hands aren't moving. I would just assume it's not wound. You have paintings on the walls and you have pictures that you can't double click on. There's a lot of stuff here. I feel like I would want to be able to mess with. Let's see. This. And then this. And then that. And then that. How are we gonna do this? Minus, plus, minus is an indicator here. And if I did that instead, and that, I just powered something up. I didn't even know what it was. And it just took me straight to this area, which I feel like I'm going to turn on the lights and there's going to be an electric chair in there and I'm going to kill something. No, instead I turned on the lights to a lighthouse, which I guess the idea here is to take a picture of something. This does feel a lot like Myst, where you just kind of don't know what you're doing. So it seems very possible that you're just messing with a device and there's just like no idea whatsoever as far as what you're accomplishing. Now I just magically teleported behind the desk as if I'm a ghost, which I might be a ghost. As you've discovered on your little adventures, I probably should have read this a while ago. Contained within the null is the power to transfer matter across space-time. I've watched you cross leagues and centuries just as some lesser individuals would cross the street, but what of light years? What of aeons? Or eons? You've barely even begun to tap its potential. I have charted the world not unlike our own, yet incredibly distant. It is the source of the null. I have measured it, I even seen it, but I cannot reach it, not without your help. But first I must teach you how, and you must prove yourself capable of learning the Craftsman. We have this door is locked tight, and I can't just look inside all locks. Apparently we will be using keys. There's nothing hidden under the table, is there? Not by the looks of it. Well, it seems like we're actually going to spend considerably little time actually doing puzzles with the it's probably too high. Probably want to get the same height as far as up and down, and then this will This dial will probably change the frequency. And so, yeah. Amplitude and frequency. You're just trying to match the pattern in behind, which, yeah, it's a pretty basic puzzle. Of course, depending on how picky they're going to be here, this could be a fairly hard one to perfectly dial in. And this is pointing a laser now to something on the wall that I didn't get to see before the fact. And it created a null door, and I'm not controlling any of this, so I'm just being forced to walk through the null door. And that was achievement 1. Interesting. So I assume at this point we are not in tutorial mode anymore, and instead we have either teleported into a completely different world, or we have teleported into the lighthouse that was across the area that we powered up. And I think this is an indicator that we are in chapter 2. And I bet, if I recall correctly, I feel like there was quite a few chapters in the previous game, in the room 2. There definitely is a lot of potential confusion here as far as just, did I even play this game already once? And I'm glad now, putting 40 minutes into it, that I realize I haven't played it, because that would have been really embarrassing for me to waste the time trying to play a game a second time. Yeah, I think though there will be a lot of chapters, but I think at 40 minutes this is as good of a point as any to end this recording. Otherwise these are going to just become super long episodes. So we'll start back up at this same location, and yeah, and that's just that. So as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.